This is the BG Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Sam.
Good Tuesday morning to you, Sam, and the sports world, and all of you wonderful folks out there. We continue to be baffled by just how awful the NFL is. Now, that's a little bit about that, but just how crazy every single week in the NFL goes. We continue to see different storylines emerge. We continue to see the playoff picture change. And I think Sam and I have just about had it. Honestly.
We're this close.
We're this close to just marching on the NFL offices in New York and saying, just enough with this chaos. Let's just figure this out and stop having so much stupidity. But regardless of that, though, we still love the NFL and we'll still pay lots of money and do things regards to it because it's the NFL. We love football. That's why we do what we do on a daily basis. But a lot of great things to get to, though, today on the show. We're going to be talking a little bit later on in the show with David Kenyon from Bleacher Report. We'll also be talking a little bit about that exact question I just asked Sam, is why the NFL is so bad, and kind of maybe see if we can at least diagnose it, because if everybody else out there can't, hopefully we can.
Hopefully. Well,
that's what we do.
I don't know if we get paid enough to figure out the NFL's problems right now.
We'll maybe get just to the brink of a breaking point and be like, we don't get paid enough to tell you what that is. So, we can't tell. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Roger Goodell. If he wants to call us, though, he can let us know. We'd be happy to figure it out for him. But either way, though, still a lot of good things to get to today. We are here from 7 to 8 a.m. Central, live on Spreaker.com and on Periscope. Morning, everybody on Periscope. Remember, if you want to interact with us during the show, that is your best spot to do it. You can also find us on social media as well, Sam.
We are on social media, yes. We are on Facebook at The BG Sports Show, on Instagram at BG Sports Show, and then on Twitter at BG Sports Show. He is at Baxter Colburn, and I am at Samuel_Wallace2.
Yes, indeed. And if you ever miss a live show, you can listen to it back on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker.com, and on Podbean as well. All right, Sam, last night was an interesting game between the Cowboys and the Indians, or the Cowboys and the Redskins.
Careful.
You would rather me say Indians or Redskins? What is there a more politically correct term? The team from Maryland that's actually got Washington, what are we?
That's weird. For a country that's turning so politically correct, it's interesting that a team in the nation's capital is still called the Redskins. That's a pretty derogatory term towards Native American people.
I was always against. I never was. Maybe if I should think about English.
That's okay.
I was always confused why the team in the nation's capital had a Native American mascot.
Right.
I feel like the Patriots would belong in, like the DC Patriots or something like that. Like that. The forefathers, something that is like America, not Redskins. It's like, we're the people that came and took away their land and all those history things. It's like, why is that our nation's capital?
Well, isn't there the New England Revolution? Isn't that your favorite?
That is my favorite soccer team. So, New England as a whole is covered. But the nation's capital, though, the America of America,
yes.
Why is it the Redskins?
I don't know. But either way, they couldn't find a way to get it done last night.
They couldn't. They had a good opportunity to close out, or at least extend their lead in the NFC East, and they end up losing to now the 4-8 Dallas Cowboys as
Only
the Redskins.
A game back. Cowboys are.
So 3 out of the 4 teams in the NFC East are at 5-7, and then the Dallas Cowboys are technically now in second place with a 4-8 record because 3 teams are tied for first place.
Jerry Jones is talking to Tony Romo and saying, "Hey, how soon do you think you can come back?"
I hope he doesn't. If he's smart and Tony doesn't want to fracture anything anymore. I'm sure Jerry was on the phone last night with him, or even talking to him up in the booth, saying, "All right, how you feeling, bro? We're only a game back. We can still win the Super Bowl. It'll be a huge payday. Everybody would love it. Cowboys are back, baby. We're back." And be like,
"America's team. You like that?
Yeah, woo!" No, just
all right.
Ugh. So before Dallas fans completely lose their mind, take a moment and just think about it for a second. If they win the division and they have to go on the road to Green Bay, Seattle, Arizona, Carolina, arguably any team outside of the NFC East, they're going to get curb stomped.
Yeah.
It's going to be bad, especially if hypothetically, if Dallas wins their division and they have to play Seattle first round, I don't care if Seattle's going or hosting, they're going to manhandle Dallas.
Well, the only way Dallas is going to get in is if they win their division, which will mean they will host a game.
I know they will, but I'm just saying, though, if they host a game, because I don't see Arizona collapsing and letting Seattle win the division. I just don't see it happening.
No.
Granted, sure, now that I said it's probably going to happen because Seattle loves to
go.
just... I'm sorry. And the Bears will win the division, too. Woo! No, it's not.
Fine.
Whatever. No, I don't understand from a playoff perspective, I have a hard time getting behind a team that wins their division with a under 500 record and letting them become, a playoff host.
I'm with you. There's something definitely wrong with the system, and I guess fortunately, unfortunately, the amount of times that it normally would happen, in several seasons is pretty slim. But
True.
We've been seeing lately. I don't know if it's because the NFL as a whole is getting more competitive within itself. Not to say that it's better or worse, but
Sure.
the teams are just getting more competitive with each other. That it's getting harder and harder to win division games and win your division. That over the last few seasons, I feel like more so we've had division leaders at that 500, at 9-7, 7-9, potentially 6-8 or 6-10 teams hosting playoff games.
I agree. I mean, looking at every division leader right now, the Patriots are 10-2, Bengals are 10-2, the Colts are 6-6, Broncos are 10-2. So the AFC, at least from a divisional perspective, aside from the stupid AFC North, everybody else kind of has their acts together.
It
at least the
like
division leaders. Then you go to the NFC, and then that's where it gets to be a bit of a mess. Washington leads their division at 5-7. Green Bay 8-4. Carolina's 12-0. They skew the results, and then Arizona is 10-2. So, but there's such a big drop off, though.
Yeah.
I mean, NFC South, the next best team in the NFC South is 6-6 at Tampa, and Atlanta 6-6 as well. So there's no way that any of those guys can get up to that level because they only come in 4 more games.
Yeah.
Arizona, Seattle, there's such a big gap there. Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit, those guys are all-ish in the same boat. But then it always goes back to how terrible the NFC East is. And I have a hard time trying to figure out exactly what's making sense of it all, because at this point, Dallas has the best divisional record with 3-2.
Gosh.
So if it ends up being
okay.
a tiebreaker where all 4 teams have to, all end up in the same record, which I don't think has happened I don't think it's ever happened.
Yeah, can it happen? I guess we'd have to go back and do the math.
I'd have to go back and do the math, but at the moment Dallas has the best divisional record. So please, if anybody out there is more smarter than I, which is very possible to do, if everybody was 5-7 right now, but Dallas has the best divisional record, I think they would be first based off of that.
I would. Yeah.
I don't know for sure. I'd have to ask David Kenyon when he comes on next segment. But you look at just the progression here in the NFC East. I mean, Dallas is on a 1-game win streak. The Giants are on a 3-game losing streak. Eagles are on a 1-game win streak. And now the Redskins, after last night, are on a 1-game losing streak. The Giants are the only team in the division that have a positive point differential with +11.
Yep.
Aside from that, though, the Redskins, who are the division leader, quote-unquote division leader, have a -29 point differential. I don't understand what is going on that these teams are so bad, and this division as a whole continues to just flounder, because there were several years within the last 5 to 10 years where it's like, you don't want to mess with the NFC East because now the Giants are hot, and Donovan McNabb is leading the Eagles to glory, and Tony Romo and those Cowboys, they're going to always give you a run for their money. And then it was always and there's Washington.
Yeah.
Washington is
Thanks
never.
for playing.
It was usually those 3 teams, Eagles, Giants, Cowboys, battling it out, and then Washington just happened to show up to the party late and never got invited.
Those NFC East games, like you said, in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years have been really good.
Yeah.
They've always had, the big playoff implications, especially like, the November, December, even Thanksgiving night games like that. All right, Eagles and Giants are playing on Sunday night. Like, this is going to be a good game, but it just hasn't panned out.
So going forward, I guess, and I know we can talk a little bit about this too when we get to our other segment in terms of why the NFL is so bad this year. But I guess a question that I'll preface it with, excuse me, is that, does the NFL need to go to the same playoff format that what the NBA has, where just the top best 8 teams with the records get into the playoffs in each conference? I mean, that's top 8. You could do top 6 still and still get those first 2 round buys. But instead of doing it by division winner, do we just maybe combine it and just maybe into a table and say, hey, top 8 or top 6 teams get in?
I mean, that's how they do it in fantasy football.
That's true.
I mean, I know at least for our fantasy football perspective, at least a few years that we've been in the league together, there usually ends up being, like the West Division or whatever has, 6 of the top 8 teams, and then the other side gets, the token 2, just because that's how it plays out. But is that something the NFL should do? Maybe. I think it wouldn't be a bad thing to give it a try.
Sure.
Just put a little asterisk next to like the 2020 season and say, hey, this is the year that
we're going to try it out and see what happens. It's not a bad idea. I mean, the NFL is, you can't experiment with that in the preseason like you can for rule changes, like for extra points and stuff like that. But I would not be opposed to it because, well, I don't know if it'll give me a general concept here. So if you were to do it in the AFC right now, it'd be the Bengals, Broncos, Patriots, Chiefs, and Jets would be the teams in, not the Colts.
Yeah.
So,
and again, really, it only affects the AFC North and then the NFC East currently right now because those divisions are so bad.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, if you did the NFC right now, the top six teams in would be the Panthers, Cardinals, Packers, Vikings, Seahawks, and Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Those would be the 6 teams in right now.
Yep.
Because Washington, as a division leader, is 5-7, and
Yep.
at least from a numerical standpoint, is not good enough.
Exactly.
So I'd be curious to see something like that. Let us know your thoughts on Periscope and on Twitter as well. Like we mentioned, you can follow us at BG Sports Show, at Baxter Colburn, at Samuel_Wallace2. We're going to bring in David Kenyon here in our next segment and talk a little fantasy football. But before we do, a quick word from one of our sponsors of the BG Sports Show. That would be Student Debt Center. You can call them today to have your student loan payments reduced by calling 855-401-3508.
That number again is 855-401-3508. Back with more after the break.
Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Sam.
Quick reminder for all of you listeners out there that if you enjoy listening to the BG Sports Show, you can get us right here from 7 to 8 a.m. Central, live on Spreaker.com and on Periscope as well.
We are also broadcasted from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time on SportsRadioAmerica.com, live 365, and tune in.
Well done. Well done, Sam. You got it this time. Proud of you. Nailed it. Boom.
2 days in a
High
row.
five. Well done. Woo! All right, Sam. How bad is the NFL?
It's pretty bad.
It is atrociously bad. I don't know exactly how we can sit here calmly and discuss this because I might get a little fired up because this, to my knowledge, and I've been following the NFL closely for probably about 10-ish years. I've had a good enough grasp of the NFL for probably about 10 years since I was probably about 13, 14 years old. I really started
middle
hard-nosed.
school.
Yeah, that end of middle school, high school, I really started following the NFL closely.
Yep.
Wow, I just feel really old now. Holy cow.
10 years ago, huh?
Wow.
No kidding.
Anyways, so to my knowledge at least, this has probably been one of the worst years production-wise, officiating-wise, and overall team record-wise.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we should maybe look at all three of those aspects and kind of try to diagnose a little bit of what is going on. So I think the one thing that a lot of folks keep talking about is the officiating.
Oh, yeah.
Let's take a look at the officiating, Sam. So what exactly can we say about the officiating? Because I at least feel like this year, more than any year, the refs are either A, too terrified to throw flags, or B, too flag happy. And usually in the past, it's one or the other. It's not both. And I think there's been a lot of, you keep hearing the guy from LA gets brought in for the call. It's like, oh, that was a good no call. It's like, well, why was it? Like, should we just have the call anyway? Like, if there's pass interference, let's call it. Let's not call it.
Yeah.
We're going to have people all fired up, and then people like us are going to lose our mind as well and, go crazy. So what exactly do you make of the officiating, Sam?
I think being an official in the NFL right now, I know we talked about it. I don't know if it was off the air or on the air, but they do make quite a bit of money.
They make a lot of money. I think $173,000 for a part-time job to work 14 to 17 times a year.
Yeah, and the thing that got me, well, even before I realized that, I was just thinking to myself, being an NFL official right now is probably not a really, desirable position to have because, like you said, they're either too afraid to throw flags or they're too flag happy. And I think once the officials get it in their head that they're not going to call the perfect game, that they're going to make mistakes, it just compounds itself and just snowballs, and they make more, which is unfortunate.
I agree. I completely agree with you on that one. I don't feel like the refs need to brand their entire game off of, okay, if I make a bad call here, then, it's going to affect the entire game. It's like, look, officiate the game the way you're supposed to because you're getting paid a lot of money.
And just trust your training.
Exactly. It's not like these guys are being trod out blind and saying, hey, a tug on the jersey, pass interference. Al grabs his face mask. All right, you're good to go.
Yeah.
These guys spend hours and hours and hours in training in the off season. They go to classes, they go to seminars.
They look at rule books, they watch film. I mean, they do a lot of behind the scenes work. They don't just get off their couches every day and, trot on out and say, all right, let's play some football.
And I think some people do feel that way with certain refs. And I've heard there's one reffing crew that got flexed to a different game this year because of their inconsistencies and their blown calls. They were originally scheduled to do, I think it was like a primetime game.
They got shifted
to some whatever game because they're like, we can't.
Baltimore-Cleveland game or something.
Probably. They're like, we can't have, all these potentially bad calls from this crew that's been fairly inconsistent.
Yep.
Just because of this big game, and we would hate to have the game outcome changed because of that. Now, I've got some numbers here for you, Sam, of the amount of penalties called in the NFL over the last 4 years. So, I'll give you a gauge of the last 3 years, and then I'll tell you what the NFL is at right now.
Okay.
So, 2012 for the entire year, the amount of penalties called was 3,809.
3,800. Okay.
Yep. In 2013, we had 3,600, basically.
Okay.
2014, we had 4,200.
Okay.
And then this year, we're at only 3,100. And we still have 4 games left to play.
Oof.
So that number immediately kind of messes with my original thoughts and views now because I'm a little confused now on what exactly is now? Is it as bad now that I know that number? Because I didn't know that number before.
Yeah. Does that change your perception of it? I don't know.
I didn't see. Like I said, I've been following the league fairly closely. I didn't think the officiating was that bad last year. That there were 4,200 penalties, and we're not even close to that this year. And we've got 4 games left.
Maybe it's one of those things too, where maybe it's just the type of penalties that we're noticing. I feel like, we talked about this I think last week too. I'm almost afraid now every time there's a good play to get excited about it because I'm like, all right, who held?
Yep.
Who got him open? It's coming back. I feel like that has happened quite a bit this year.
I agree.
As opposed to other years where, I don't know, maybe is it the offensive linemen that are suddenly being called for things they should have been being called for? Are the calls being made tighter? Could be. But again, too, maybe it's one of those things where maybe last year there was a ton of offsides calls, false start calls that are very clear cut, that you can't argue with.
I agree. Well, I mean, looking at the penalty counts this year, the most penalized penalty this year is offensive holding.
Yep.
542 penalties this year for it. At least about 3 a game are called. False starts, also 424 have happened so far. Yep. Defensive holding, 182, and then defensive pass interference, 183.
Yeah, I feel like those ones are more, and again, you start getting into defensive holding, defensive pass interference. Where's the 5-yard rule actually come into effect? How much did he bump him? How much did he tug his jersey? I feel like once you get further on down the line of most frequently called penalties, they become more and more ambiguous.
I agree. I mean, looking at the penalty counts even from last year, because I'm curious, I'm like, well, they had 4,200 penalties last year. Where'd they make their money off of, for all these? Offensive holding had 642 calls last year, and false start had 612.
Wow.
The next closest was defensive holding with 235.
So just all on the offensive line.
So the offensive lines, at least as a whole last year, were pretty terrible. I mean, you averaged about 2 to 2.5 offensive and a false start penalties a game.
Yep.
The fewest flag team last year was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
They averaged a little less than 1 flag a game,
wow.
or 1 penalty a game.
Go Pittsburgh.
So when it came to holding,
yep.
pardon me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I read that and then I looked at it again. I'm like, wait a second, but. So this year, though, for at least offensive holding being the most penalized one, Arizona and Minnesota are the least penalized at that one.
Yeah.
The worst this year is Chicago.
Okay.
They average almost 3 a game with offensive holding penalty calls. So
and again, the teams that I'm hearing that are doing it the fewest do strike me as being more disciplined teams. Like last year, Pittsburgh Steelers are a very disciplined program, which doesn't surprise me that Mike Tomlin has his guys in line and playing very well. So.
I agree. No, I completely agree with you on that one. Yeah, and just looking around the rest of the league here, I don't see Green Bay on anything really. So that's Green Bay has 0 roughing the passer calls this year, so that's one of their claims to fame, I guess.
They don't have a pass rush, that's why.
True. Tennessee is the only team in the NFL this year to not have a defensive pass interference call. Fun fact.
Cool.
Just the more you know, I guess.
Hey, the more you know.
I was looking, it's like the fewest flags, Tennessee, 0. Oh, okay.
There you
go. Well done.
Just
so,
like that.
So aside from the penalties, another big thing that has bothered the NFL this year have been all the injuries, and it's not just been all the injuries, it's been all the injuries to the, no offense to anybody else, all the injuries to the really good players.
To the big name players.
Yes, to the good players, the cogs, the great players. You might not have elite offensive linemen, but that's one of the big things that jump out right away.
Yeah.
I
know we were kind of joking the other morning on the show. I was just looking at the waiver wire of our fantasy football league that we're in together. And I was like, oh, look, it's Jamal Charles, Le'Veon Bell, Justin Forsett, Arian Foster, Jordy Nelson. I was like, my goodness.
I'm not exactly sure, what it is. I feel like it's one position every year that is just riddled with injuries.
Seems to be running backs this year.
And this year it is high level to elite running backs.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because it's been great to see, though, guys like Sharkhandrick West and Spencer Ware and Javarius Allen and a lot of these other guys step up. Jeremy Langford stepped up with Forte being hurt for a while.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that, at least from a running back perspective, that the next upcoming class of running backs, those teams are going to be good.
And the thing is, too, is with injuries, those are unfortunately good opportunities that if you're a guy in the bench, you don't want that to happen to your team.
No, of course not.
But you do want a chance to play.
Yes, I completely agree with you on that one. You want to hope the best for your team as a whole. But like you mentioned, you want to get on the field. That's why you played. That's why you played college. That's why you played high school. All those training hours is to get to the NFL to actually play the game.
Yeah.
So. With that being said, though, Sam, I mean, what else can this NFL really do, or the NFL as a whole do to maybe not have such a crappy level of production? Because I just feel like the play is sloppy, and maybe this is because I watch a lot of Green Bay football, but from what I've seen from other games, though, too, the quarterbacks and receivers don't look in sync a lot this year. I just feel like the defenses, you're either insanely good at defense or you're
not.
A cheese shredder, just wide open. People can go right through you, no big deal. I don't see a lot of consistency across, and that's one of the things looking at those records, as we mentioned. I don't see consistency across the board, and I think, yes, folks will say Carolina, they're undefeated. Well, we could go on for days about their strength of schedule.
Yep.
You can look at
Arizona. The lack of division they play in.
I think Arizona is a good example of a team that has been battle tested. They've played the good teams, they've played the bad teams. They've come out 10-2. They're an honest 10-2.
Yes, they are.
Cincinnati is maybe kind of short.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost to Houston, so that was a humbling experience for them. So they've lost to bad teams. They've played some fairly decent teams.
Yep.
New England now is kind of at that point, too.
Yeah.
Denver is at that point as well, where they've had to play some good and bad teams. So there are a few honest teams out there, but
few and far between.
It's very hard to find, and I think that is very disheartening and discouraging, for the rest of the NFL that want to continue to follow, because it does make retaining fans, it does make all kinds of things of that nature difficult for people to want to join more.
Yes, it does.
So, is there a way to correct any of this, Sam, going forward?
Man, I don't know. Injuries are one of those things that the teams themselves have to figure out. Sometimes they're fluke injuries, like the Jordy Nelson torn ACL, a non-contact thing like that. Same with Jamal Charles, non-contact. Time and time again, I've just been curious to know what it's like for the strength and conditioning coaches of these NFL teams and the level of which they're preparing their guys. And again, I know they can only do so much, and the guys it's on them to get their bodies into shape in the offseason and things like that. There can't be a coach over their shoulder every day of the week, 365 days a year. But as far as the injury bug, I don't really think there's a whole lot you can do about that. That's just kind of a nature of the game. As far as the officiating, I think if this continues for another year, I mean, I'd say wait it out this year, and if it's as bad or worse next year, I think you need to have a serious conversation about overhauling the officiating crews.
I agree. I think that there's something that needs to be said and done about that, and folks need to say, all right, what are we going to do now going forward? Because there were rumors of a big purge coming for the NFL, but I haven't heard much of anything recently indicating that there's going to be need for a massive purge. But like you mentioned, though, I mean, if the officiating continues to get bad, well, now that I know, though, that last year there was over 4,200 penalties, and we're only at 3,100 this year. We only got 4 games left.
Now I'm like, all right.
I feel a little bit better about the officials now.
And again,
I'm fine arming myself with that stat going forward for those arguments.
Because you can't argue with the numbers. And two, it's one of those things where you're going to have off years. Everybody is. So
I agree. All right, well, we've got David Kenyon all booked up and ready to roll for our next segment. We'll chat with him about fantasy football. If you got any questions, now's the time. And tweet at us at Baxter Colburn, at Samuel_Wallace, or on Periscope as well at BG Sports Show. We'll be back with more right after this. we go. Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Sam.
Quick reminder for all of you social media lovers out there that if you enjoy the BG Sports Show, why not give us a like on Facebook? Go and like the BG Sports Show, and then give us a follow as well on Twitter and Instagram at BG Sports Show.
You can find news articles, videos, pictures, and more pretty much every day.
Pretty much. We do our best to post pictures and videos and fun things. I always try to share some funny videos if I see them. There's great people. Whistle Sports does a lot of great things as well, so I love to share their content as well. So let us know, your thoughts. Follow us. If you ever have any questions or want to get in contact with the show or want to voice your opinion about something that Sam said that was completely outlandish,
it happens.
Please let us know. He's a little hard to contain most days, folks, so I do my best to keep him under wraps. So it is Tuesday, which means we get to welcome in Bleacher Report's David Kenyon. So, David, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
We are doing exceptionally well.
Doing excellent.
I'm a little mad I lost fantasy football this week, but it kind of happens when you're starting running backs and starting receivers get a combined total of 2 points. So not my greatest week from fantasy, but, it's a rebuilding year. No, we're 8-5. I think we got a chance, Sam. But, it happens. So how did you do in fantasy this week, David?
Well, it depends on the league. I think I did win pretty much all of them. There was one league I got 227 points, so
holy cow,
that didn't go so badly.
That was our league.
227.
100.
Did you say 127 or 200?
227.
Oh, so you only got 127 in our league,
which in a standard league is pretty good.
That is true. That is true. How did you get 227 out of curiosity here?
PPR league.
Let's see. I'll pull up the box score, but I had Antonio Brown. He got 45.2. He led the way. Cam Newton 38.1. Javorius Allen.
Oh,
nice.
35.
Jeez.
And then a lot of high 19s.
My goodness, sir. So you were fairly happy with how your team turned things in. And you could have even had more points, too, in on the BG Sports Show Fantasy League. You left Doug Baldwin with 21 points on your bench, so you could have, not like you didn't have a bad day from everybody on your team, but he could have replaced, Des Bryant or something, who only got you 6 points. But still, a resounding win for you. You took down Joe Wolfrath, so you got a 127 to, was it 89 victory, I think, something like that? Or 86?
86. And didn't really matter either way. I was stuck in the number 3 seed as long as I won, but I got the win.
Hey, it's all about the win, man. It's all that matters. So, all right, well, David, so aside from fantasy sports in terms of the BG Sports Show League, fantasy owners got to see a lot of great action from certain players this week. Who were some of the top performers this week in fantasy football?
Well, as I mentioned right there, Antonio Brown, Cam Newton, and Buck Allen, they all had a very good week, especially in PPR. For Brown and Allen. Allen had 12 catches for the Ravens out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Allen Robinson flat out exploded.
Yes, he did.
He had a couple garbage time touchdowns that helped too, but 10 for 153 and 3 scores. That is a massive game.
Not bad. Not bad at all if you like that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Russell Wilson surprised me. He threw 3 touchdowns and ran for 50 and a score again. That was a really encouraging sign for his owners because he's on fire right now, and he's doing it on the road, which is usually not the case.
That's true, yeah, especially with Russell. I've traditionally, to my knowledge, he's usually struggled to produce at a high level on the road, but this is the second time, at least in recent history, that I've seen Russell go for at least 30 points in fantasy, which, like you mentioned, is very encouraging for owners of Russell Wilson who are like, well, we've got a mobile quarterback in a Seattle offense. Maybe he'll get me high teens to low 20s on a decent basis, but he's dropped over 30 points now several times this year. So I'm sure going into playoffs now for fantasy football, a lot of folks have to be pretty happy about that going forward.
Oh, and I'd be absolutely psyched if I had him. Baltimore's next, and Baltimore's bad. And then Cleveland is next, and Cleveland is awful.
Yeah, so if you've got Russell Wilson, it's pretty much a safe bet to start him the remainder of the season, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd say.
No doubt about that.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, I'm curious, though, about Allen Robinson, though. I mean, it's fantastic that he exploded, and we've seen him and Allen Hurns do a pretty good job for Jacksonville this year and make Blake Bortles fairly relevant, at least in a fantasy perspective. Do owners of Allen Robinson think going forward that he's going to be a consistent scorer? I don't think he's going to drop 30-some points a week going forward, but did this kind of showcase that he's capable of becoming maybe a number one receiver for a lot of fantasy teams now?
Well, Robinson has been this consistent in PPR leagues specifically. After one catch for 27 yards, Robinson, again in points per reception leagues, has not scored fewer than 10 points a game this season.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last, 8 or 9 weeks, I believe, no fewer than 16. So he's a strong wide receiver 2 and a borderline wide receiver 1.
So he might be one of those guys, at least going into next year, or if people have him in a dynasty league or something, that you're going to want to try to retain him as long as possible.
You are going to keep Allen Robinson as long as humanly possible, yes.
I love it. All right, so aside from those big guys, were there any surprise top performers this week? I mean, I know Robinson might have been a little bit of a surprise to that level. As you mentioned, he's been consistent, but to break out that far. But was there anybody else, though, that kind of stood out this week that folks probably were a little surprised by how well they or the team did?
Well, Baldwin was definitely one. I benched him in all my leagues. After 145 and 3, you don't expect him to go off again, and he went 594 and 2. So that was a decent surprise.
No kidding.
Darren Sproles, it looks like he's the featured back in Philadelphia now, which is smart.
Agreed.
15 carries, 66 yards, and did his normal four catches out of the backfield, also returned a punt for a touchdown. So he really made some fantasy owners happy. Richard Rodgers kind of exploded out of nowhere after awful weeks for most of the year.
I was going to say, he's been pretty consistently awful all season long as one who owns Richard Rodgers. Every week, I think that it's more of a hope and a prayer when I start him saying, you know what, Rich, I feel like, maybe this will be the week. Aaron will finally throw you the ball inside the 20-yard line, and you'll break free and get into the end zone. And I was telling Sam this earlier in the week as well, even last week, that even up until that last game-winning touchdown catch, he still had a pretty good night. I mean, he had 7 catches on 7 targets and was approaching 100 yards, and I was like, this is... I'm fine with this. I think he had 11 points, at least in standard fantasy, before that big touchdown catch. So at that point, I was like, okay, this is what I wanted from Richard Rodgers. But I don't know, at least as a fantasy owner, I'm incredibly skeptical, thinking that he's going to do this now consistently going forward.
And that's the biggest thing you always have to remember is you look at players like Chris Polk scored a touchdown this week. Rodgers gets this miracle, and you're like, wow, they had such a good fantasy day.
Yeah.
But you can't count on a 65-yard Hail Mary.
No, not ever.
So Rodgers is safely on your bench if you have a better option.
I agree. I would agree with you on that one. I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers, at least the last probably 6 weeks or so, 5 to 6 weeks, have kind of deemed himself not a surefire start anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he does have 4 touchdowns during that time, but he's getting less than 40 yards, so he's a very touchdown-dependent receiver.
Agreed. Yep, I would agree with you on that one. All right, so looking ahead, David, or talking with David Kenyon of Bleacher Report here on the BG Sports Show, looking ahead to this coming week of fantasy football action, what are some good matchups that if fantasy owners have certain players that they need to make sure that they are surefire starts?
Well, I believe... James White is going to have a larger role. The Patriots are just so frustrating with running backs, and I think I said it last week, you just cannot trust them because White goes from a great game to getting, he got 3 carries and 2 catches, and then yesterday he gets 10 catches. I think, especially if Gronkowski isn't back, I think White's a really good play.
Agreed.
For underrated-wise, at least. Otherwise, you look at the top, you hope Carson Palmer, even on short rest, can tear apart a Minnesota secondary that's just been terrible over the top. And Arizona's the best team in the league at throwing deep.
So if you're thinking about, so if you're thinking about it from that perspective, I think that Arizona is one of those teams that if you have one of their starting 3 receivers, is going to be a good fantasy option, I feel like, going forward, because all 3 of those guys with Fitzgerald, Brown, and Floyd have all really showcased that it's not just Larry, it's not just John Brown. It's like those 3 guys are all kind of over the place. We do have a question from somebody on Periscope asking about your thoughts about the Oakland Raiders. Is there any fantasy implications at all for the Oakland Raiders? Anybody that I know there's not a lot of positive bright spots for them anymore this season, but is there anybody for Oakland though that should be considered a start in fantasy leagues right now?
This week, no, because they play the Broncos defense, and the Broncos are just locked down, especially at receivers. Amari Cooper, they contained him pretty well earlier this year. Michael Crabtree would be the next best option. Maybe Clive Walford this week as a tight end.
Okay.
Especially in points per reception leagues.
But
then after that, they get the Packers and Chargers, and then you can happily throw Derek Carr, Latavius Murray, Cooper, Crabtree, and then maybe Walford, depending on your options, those weeks pretty safely.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah. So for someone like me, I own Adrian Peterson in my fantasy league, and Adrian Peterson has been kind of a hot mess, at least this last week. You know, he only got 8 carries. Sam and I, we talked about that a little bit. You got a thank you as well, David, from someone on Periscope for answering the Raiders question, so thanks for doing that. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The question, I guess, is Adrian Peterson upset by the lack of carries he got last week. He only touched the ball 12 total times between running and passing. But going up against Arizona, is Adrian Peterson... I mean, I know we're not going to not start Adrian Peterson, but what's a realistic viewer, or what's the word I'm looking for, Sam? I don't know. What's the realistic expectation of what he's going to do from a fantasy perspective?
Well, let me pull up your team, and we'll go specifically from your team.
Oh, I appreciate it.
You can consider benching Adrian Peterson in a week like this. It's the playoffs; these matter the most.
True.
During the season, you ride your studs, but during the playoffs, you have to go, especially with your gut. Now, your team that horrifies me, and I'm sorry.
My team horrifies you?
Yeah, Alfred Blue being your next best option.
Yeah.
I would leave Adrian Peterson in.
I'll probably go the Spencer Ware route though for Alfred Blue. I had Justin Forsett in a trade, and then he broke his arm. Other running backs, I invested in Carlos Hyde this year. I kind of got screwed with that. I thought I had somebody else that was fairly good, but it's just not been a good year for me for running backs as a whole.
You had Doug Martin as well.
Oh, I had Doug Martin, traded him away as well to fill some other needs on my team. But it's not been the greatest production year for me at the running back spot. So I've been trying to make up with it in other spots, and that's why I kind of invested heavily in Peterson, saying, well, if the rest of my running backs don't show up, maybe I'll be okay. But I don't honestly know what makes the most sense going forward.
Yeah, and this is a perfect case where you look at your team, and I'm not sure you want to put in Rashad Jennings. And would you feel more comfortable losing with Adrian Peterson? I'd think yes.
Yeah, of course.
You know, that's a disappointing way to look at fantasy, but it is just a game. You
True.
have to realize, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and I hope Adrian Peterson does well. Arizona's defense is one of the toughest against the run in the league.
True.
But running games own Thursday night. Minnesota needs to run the ball. He was a little outspoken about wanting to run the ball.
Give him the ball, coach.
So give him the ball and put him in your lineup and pray. But if you have a team that's extraordinarily deep, you can certainly play the matchups.
Sure, which makes 100% sense on that, honestly. So, all right. Well, any other fantasy advice or insights for us, sir, before we let you roll?
Bench DeMarco Murray.
Okay. I mean, he's kind of been a hot and cold, more so a cold, I feel like, running back this year, but a good piece of advice, though, for folks going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo and Arizona, the next 2 games, plus Sproles is more effective right now. Who knows when Ryan Matthews is getting back? Just bench DeMarco Murray.
Fair enough. All right, well, David Kenyon, sir, always a pleasure. You can find David Kenyon on Bleacher Report and numerous other platforms, but where can they find you on social media, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at Kenyon19_BR.
Fantastic. David Kenyon, our encyclopedia of all things football here on the BG Sports Show. Always a pleasure, sir. We will speak with you again on Thursday to preview the upcoming week's action in the NFL.
Can't wait.
All right, we'll be back with more on the BG Sports Show. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. That would be Student Debt Center. You can call them today to inquire about getting your student loan payment reduced by calling 855-401-3508.
Again, that number is 855-401-3508. Back with more after the break.
Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. No more Sam. Sam had to run off. He's got a presentation to further his academic career. So good luck, Sam. Godspeed, sir. We will send many a prayer and hope and wonderfulness, good vibes your way, sir. So do many wonderful things with your life, and well, we'll see him tomorrow. So reminder, though, for all of you that if you enjoy listening to the BG Sports Show, you can find us right here from 7 to 8 a.m. Central live on Spreaker.com. You can also find us on Periscope live at the same time, and you can also find the show rebroadcast from 11 to 1 p.m. Central on Sports Radio America, sportsradioamerica.com, Live 365, and tune in, and then on demand on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and on Podbean as well. Before we wrap up the show today, we've got two more little segments that I want to buzz through real fast, and I found it interesting. Bleacher Report released an article recently called 15 Last-Minute End-of-the-Year Sports Wishes for 2015. Now, ironically enough, a few of them have already come true, so I'm sure they're all thrilled by that, but wanted to make mention of a few of them fast here. So for those of you that are on Periscope, I would love to hear your interactions and thoughts about some of these things. You can also find us on Twitter at BG Sports Show, at Baxter Colburn, at Samuel_Wallace2, if you want to comment on things we're talking about today. So one of the first thing that has popped up on the article here, though, is that number 15 is that Terrell Owens finally needs to let it go. For those of you that don't know, Terrell Owens has been begging and pleading with the NFL and certain NFL teams that he is still good enough to play. He wants to come back. He's like, put me in, coach. I'll be just fine. Terrell Owens is 41 years old right now, and he is still hell-bent on thinking that he can be a solid contributor in the NFL. And at this point, honestly, he just needs to realize that his career is over and needs to move on. So I totally agree with this wish that Terrell Owens needs to just let it go, or whatever, he just needs to move on. Another good one here, number 14, is let Derrick Rose finally find his game. Let's be honest, we all would like to see a long-term, healthy Derrick Rose because he would be a fantastic and absolutely game-changing player in the NBA. if he would actually be healthy long enough to stay consistent and build up enough momentum. But obviously, that has not been the case. He continues to be riddled with injury bugs, unfortunately. So, does he end up becoming a better player long term? Maybe. I'm not sure. Number 13 on the list here of 15 last-minute end-of-the-year sports wishes for 2015. Number 13, let the men dance. If Cam Newton wants to dab, if Travis Kelce wants to whip a nay-nay and hit the quan, let him do it. No one's out there flicking people off, giving them the bird, yelling obscenities at people. They're doing dances that have no sexual innuendos, none of that stuff going on. Mothers don't need to be writing letters to the NFL and to Cam Newton and other teams saying, oh, my daughter is forever, scarred for life, da-da-da-da-da. Does anybody watch a soccer game when a soccer player scores a goal? They rip their shirt off, they freak out, they bang their chest, they do crazy, elaborate celebrations, and nobody bats an eye. But Cam Newton runs for a 1-yard touchdown and decides to, dab, and everybody loses their mind and freaks out saying he's a thug, that he doesn't know what it's like to play in the NFL, he's unprofessional. I'm sorry, but really, guys? Come on. Let's think about this for a moment. But I just my thoughts about that. Like I said, let us know your thoughts on Periscope and Twitter. Number 12 here, let Kevin Durant spare us a decision. Yes, I hope so. I don't need Kevin Durant doing the 1-hour ESPN special like LeBron James did, where he sits in front of a group of children and an ESPN reporter and finally is like, I've decided to take my talents to Miami or whatever. We don't. If Kevin Durant is going to stay in Oklahoma, bro. If you're going to go to somewhere else, just tell everybody. You don't need to dance around and freak out and, where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? Oh, I went up over here. Oh, just kidding, going here. Like, just pick a team, go. Play basketball. You're a great basketball player. You're going to make any team you play on better. Just go for it, man. Number 11 here on 15 last-minute end-of-the-year sports wishes for 2015. Let everything come together for the college football playoff. I mean, realistically, I've always been a supporter saying that I think it needs to go to 8 teams, not 4 teams. I always think that 4 is too small, but this year it seems like they've kind of got a better handle on it in year 2 of the college football rankings and playoffs. I hope it works out well for them. I like the concept. I think with college football, we need a playoff system. There's too many good teams. The BCS system, I just never was a fan of it. I always thought it was rigged. Never really liked how it worked out. So I think an 8-team playoff would be perfect. No more, no less, 8 teams. So I think they need to move to that in the near future. Number 10, let Rex Ryan make the mistake of hiring his brother Rob Ryan. Rex Ryan and Rob Ryan, the Ryan brothers, special folk right there. I'm indifferent, honestly. Think he needs to just... Rob Ryan is maybe at that point in his career where he maybe should consider going into TV or something else that doesn't involve coaching an NFL team on the defensive side of things. Number 9, let Drake not be everywhere. I'm sure as soon as I voice my opinion about Drake that I'm either going to be heralded as a hero and a preacher, or I'm going to be ridiculed for saying, how can you not like Drake? I'll be honest, I've never liked Drake. I think that he is a disgrace to the music industry and the sports world for him trying to show that he is, oh, I know everybody, and oh, look at me, I was at this game, and oh, I'm a fan of this team, I'm a fan of that team, I'm a fan of that team. It's like, bro, pick a team. Pick a frickin' team and shut your mouth. No one likes your music. No one likes your stupid hotline bling. Whatever else the hell he's doing, he just needs to stop doing it because I've never been a fan of him, and I think he's a little ridiculous personally. So, number 8 here of the 15 last-minute end-of-the-year sports wishes for 2015. Let the Browns finally catch a break. I'm indifferent on this one, honestly. I enjoy Cleveland suffering, but I think it would be nice for Cleveland to finally have a little bit of positivity go their way. They've run into all the issues with their quarterbacks and now Johnny Manziel, but I think it would be interesting to see a good Cleveland Browns team for once. So we do have somebody on Periscope, 414_Koala, saying I didn't like Hotline Bling. I agree with you on that one. I thought the meme videos were fantastic. The little pizza and the whatever else that people were doing. I thought that was brilliant. So well done by everybody about that one. I like that one. David_Suarez on Periscope says, how about getting Eddie Lacy back to Eddie Lacy form? That would be fantastic. I would love to add this to this list. Although I'm in the media world, my favorite team is the Green Bay Packers. I would love it for Eddie Lacy to get back to normal form because he has been atrocious recently. And Green Bay needs a consistent running game again. Otherwise, Green Bay can literally forget about any chance of a Super Bowl run if they don't have a running game. Because Rodgers can't do it all. He really can't. But, go Pack, go. Thank you. Amen on that one. Thank you, guys. Julia V. Bell, I'm well. Thank you for asking. How are you? Finishing up the list here, number 7. Let someone sign David Price already. Well, that happened, obviously. The Boston Red Sox are now going to spend $216 million over 7 years. He's going to be making $85,000 a day for the next 7 years. That's ridiculous. Number 6 here on this list from Bleacher Report, finishing up. Let all athletes follow in the footsteps of Ryan Fitzpatrick. I like this concept and this idea. I didn't realize this, and maybe more people out there did. Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. So did Jeremy Lin. I think folks knew that. But people need to realize that you can do different things by having a fantastic education. Football is not the end-all, be-all. It's just not. Sports are not. You only play them for 10 to 20 years if you're really lucky and injury-free. Then you have to have a life after that, And I think that by him going to Harvard and really just caring more so about his education, then, you really seem to be doing a good thing about it. So, number 5 on this, let the color rush die. I agree. Those color rush Jaguar uniforms and Packers and all of those other things I think are ridiculous. I still feel bad about those Bills and Jets fans that watched that game with the color rush uniforms and it looked like 2 gray teams playing each other, which I thought was slightly funny, not from a colorblind perspective, but the fact that the NFL didn't even think about that. So the NFL needs to think a little bit closer about that one next time. This is an interesting wish list. Let the Warriors lose a game is number 4 on here. They're going to lose eventually, okay? When this article came out, the Warriors were 18-0. Now I think they're 23-0, so they're going to lose, okay? It's going to happen, and I'm sure ESPN will have a field day with it and be like, yes, they finally lost. Woo! It's going to happen. Just relax. It's part of sports. No matter how good you are, you're always going to find a way to lose at least one game, and it's going to happen. So just relax, guys. It's going to happen. Finishing up, let Chip Kelly and the Eagles move on. Once again, this is another thing that I had with the ESPN bias and just sports media as a whole. They love a good story that they will not let die. Chip Kelly, you know what? He's doing everything he can do out there in Philly. And yes, he may have made some bad moves, but let the man coach, okay? He's got him in a spot to maybe go to the playoffs now with that victory against New England. They're 5-7, tied for a pretty awful lead in the pretty terrible NFC East. So at this point, in my mind, he's doing everything right. He's got his team tied for first place, so he's doing all the right things. Finally here, number 2, let Kobe Bryant get a few final wins. Yeah, let's send him out on a good note. And then number 1, let Peyton Manning be inspired by Kobe Bryant. I think myself and a lot of other folks out there in the sports world all agree that it is time for Peyton Manning to wrap things up and call it a day, honestly. So we are going to sign off for today, folks. So I appreciate all of you tuning in and watching and listening. And let us know your thoughts about everything that we talked about on the show today as well. So thank you for all the love and the hearts on Periscope. You guys are great. Kobe does need to take a sit down. It's time for the Black Mamba. He's retiring at the end of the year. Peyton Manning, I think it's about that time, folks. I really do. I love Peyton Manning. I've always been a big fan of the work he's done on the field and off the field, but there comes a time where he needs to do what's best for the team that he's on and for his body as well. He's only, 37, 38. He's young. Take him out of the NFL picture. He's a young guy. He's only 38. If you were to find out about, this guy that's 38 years old in the industry, wow, I'd be like, holy cow, he's still a pretty young guy. So Peyton's got a lot of life left in him. He's got a lot of things to do. He's got a family. He's got a few kids. I think he's got a kid or 2. Never remember with him. He's very quiet about his personal life. But either way, though, let us know your thoughts and get us on Periscope here. You can subscribe to us and follow us and watch the show with us every morning. You can find us on Spreaker.com and Periscope from 7 to 8 a.m. Central, Monday through Friday, and on demand on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and on Podbean. And you can also get us on SportsRadioAmerica.com, Live 365, and tune in from 11 to 1 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. Follow us on Facebook or give us a like by giving us the big thumbs up there. You can find us on Facebook at The BG Sports Show, and then on Twitter as well at BG Sports Show. I am at Baxter Colburn. Sam is at Samuel_Wallace too. And if you ever want to get a hold of the show, you can either tweet at us or shoot us an email at bgsportshow@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. My co-host has been Sam Wallace. I'm Baxter Colburn. Thanks to David Kenyon of Bleacher Report. We'll see you all again tomorrow. Our new BG Sports Show NFL Power Rankings come out tomorrow, and you're not going to want to miss it. Will New England stay at number 1 now that they've lost? Or will Carolina finally claim that elusive first-place spot? We'll find out tomorrow with everything else happening here on the BG Sports Show. Enjoy your Tuesday. And remember, Christmas is just a few days away, so enjoy the time with the holidays, and remember to keep Christ in Christmas. We'll see you guys all tomorrow. Enjoy your Tuesday.